Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all our participants, dignitaries, and our highly esteemed guest speaker, Mr. Abhishek Singh, CEO, MyGo, MD and CEO, Digital India Corporation, President and CEO, National E-Governance Division, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India, to the E-Dialogue on Ease of Living and SDG, organized by the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry. All participants will be muted to avoid any disturbances during the course of the session. To consume less bandwidth and have clarity, you may like to stop video streaming at your end. Kindly post all your relevant queries in the chat section so that they can be addressed during the Q&A session. As we begin the session, may I request Mr. Rajiv Poddar, President, IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to present the welcome address. Over to you, Mr. Poddar.
Thanks, Selvi. Respected Abhishek ji, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome. On behalf of the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry and my own, we are grateful to Abhishek ji for sparing his valuable time to be with us today. If the spirit of pre-independence was people willing to die for the country, today we should be willing to live for the country. That is, reach out to the people to inspire them to contribute to build a new India. As India grows, people too should also grow and enjoy a better quality of life. We see a clear design and action plan in the technology-enabled reforms unleashed by the government in the last few years. The emphasis of these reforms is to provide a set of benefits for most segments of the society with a focus on ease of living. India is known to be the largest democracy in the world. One of the key elements in a democratic system is the participation of citizens and their involvement in governance. Good governance is fundamental to achieving speedy and inclusive growth and to provide timely and quality service to citizens. Good governance also empowers citizens through better provisions of education, healthcare, and social security. Our Prime Minister Modi ji, after bringing a perceptible difference to the ease of doing business, is now focusing on ease of living. In his recent speech, he said that the country will ensure ease of doing business for its youth, while they should work for providing ease of living to people, particularly the poorest of the poor, through innovations and making self-reliant India. MyGov is one such initiative. It is a citizens' engagement platform founded by the Government of India to promote and achieve participation of Indian citizens in their country's governance and development. COVID-19 has brought social and economic life to a standstill and has taught the world about that globalization is important, but self-reliance is equally important. The pandemic risks are reversing most SDGs progress, but government's various policy interventions triggered under the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, accelerated by technology, has been trying to reduce the impact and overcome the challenges. We believe aiming for citizen-centric and technology-enabled governance leading to ease of living will necessitate massive changes. The change will not be a single event, but a transitional process with multiple and varied events supporting the objective of moving many organizations and their stakeholders from a current state to a future state. The Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs has launched the Ease of Living Index and Municipal Performance Index to help assess the progress made in cities through various initiatives and empower them to use evidence to plan, implement, and monitor their performance. This will catalyze action and will help to achieve broader development outcomes. The IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry represents a significant section of business, trade, and industry. Improving quality of life and ease of living for millions of citizens is no small task, and it requires multiple partnerships between government, business, and civil society. Our aim is to innovate for good, and therefore IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry, under its Ease of Living Committee, has launched a series of e-dialogue on ease of living in SDGs 2020-21. The idea of this e-dialogue is to foster a trilateral dialogue between eminent speakers, Indian government officials, and members of the chamber to synthesize some ideas for improving ease of living of Indian cities. Before I conclude, I would like to say a few words about IMC. Established in 1907 and having its headquarters in the heart of the city of Mumbai, the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry is the apex chamber of commerce, trade and industry in the western region, with its membership base of over 5,000 members and over 150 trade associations affiliated to it. Together it represents and advocates interest of over 4 lakh businesses and industry establishments across the country from diverse sectors of the industry. The theme of the Chamber this year is to reboot, reform, research, as these factors are going to be crucial for India and other economies globally reeling under the impact of the pandemic. Once again, I welcome you all to this contemporary and thought-provoking discussion. Thank you, Abhishek ji, for being with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Poddar. I now request Mr. M.K. Chauhan, Chairman Ease of M.K. Chauhan, Chairman Ease of Living Committee IMC, to present the introductory address. Over to you, Mr. Chauhan.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Singh. On behalf of Ease of Living Committee, I am delighted to add my word of welcome to you, and also a very warm welcome to all the participants. As the very term ease of living denotes, the mandate of this committee is 4-5 things: to make living better for people, to improve quality of life for common citizens in terms of day-to-day living, to perform advocacy role and work with the local authorities to ensure that people can commute in comfort and fast, to ensure that city is clean, free of garbage, etc., etc. But to realize these goals, we need strong bias towards the action at the local level, which means state level, ultimately city level. Therefore, in simple terms, we have kept the focus of our committee to make Maharashtra a better state to live and strike a close collaboration with the government of Maharashtra. Ease of Living Committee aims to become the bridge between the citizens and government, and to do that we need to foster an active two-way communication between government and common citizens. And it is in this context that the role of MyGov becomes extremely important for us. And we are fortunate to have the man himself, Mr. Abhishek Singh, the CEO of MyGov, to share with us his thoughts on strategies for enhancing participation of common citizens for ease of living. Ms. Singh, you'll be happy to know that we have launched a series of e-dialogues on ease of living. This will be a series of trilateral, as our President Rajiv Poddar shared a while ago, a dialogue between trinity of leaders, I call it, the industry leaders, the public leaders, which means ministers, government officials like you, and civil society leaders. The objective is to generate policy inputs, action points, and feedback through these dialogues to make real difference to the quality of life of common citizens. The first e-dialogue, for your information, Ms. Singh, was addressed by Mr. Jun Zhang, who is the country head of International Finance Corporation in India. He spoke on sustainable development of cities and IFC's role in impacting ease of living. Before I invite you, Mr. Singh, to speak, I'd like to just introduce you very briefly for the benefit of our participants. Shri Abhishek Singh is an officer of 1995 batch of IAS with diverse experience of administration, managing law and order, implementing development programs, and of policy formulation at central government with regard to use of technology for improvement of governance. He is presently posted as CEO MyGov with the additional charge of President and CEO of National E-Governance Division and MD and CEO Digital India Corporation. So he has multiple responsibilities. MyGov is the citizen engagement platform, which we are going to, as IMC, leverage to the fullest of the Government of India and enables participative governance. In his role at National and E-Governance Division, he coordinates projects relating to Digital India, especially DigiLocker, Umang, Geoinformatics. He also has been leading the efforts of communication on COVID-19 and is actively involved with Arogya Setu, the contact tracing app of Government of India. He has done Masters in Public Administration from Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Mr. Singh, for your information, I have been very actively involved with Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and I know a couple of faculties which I'm sure will be common friends of ours. I'll engage with you offline on that. And he, at this institute, was Messen Fellow in May 2013. He's a BTech and MTech in Mechanical Engineer from IIT Kanpur. He has worked in diverse Indian states of Nagaland, Uttar Pradesh. He has also worked in close coordination with international and multilateral agencies like World Bank, DFID, UNICEF, and WHO. Mr. Singh will speak to us, as I said, on strategies for enhancing participation of common citizens for ease of living for about 30 minutes, and then we will open it for questions and answers. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my proud privilege to present to you Mr. Abhishek Singh. Over to you, Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chauhan, and thank you, Mr. Podar and Amrita, for giving me this opportunity to interact with this august group of distinguished and enlightened members of IMC, who I'm sure would have a lot of ideas with regard to in what ways we can serve the citizens better, and that has been the endeavor of the government. And when you talk of ease of living, as was mentioned by Mr. Chauhan, when you talk of ease of living, how do we address the concerns that a citizen has vis-a-vis government? And there are, while some things have been done in this field, but there would be many things that are yet to be done. And I would be looking forward to getting suggestions and inputs from this group today during the question and answer session, or later through other interaction that we may have, and be benefited with the insights and the suggestions that may come. So in order to keep, since 30 minutes is indeed a long time, I would have preferred a more interactive session, but so I thought for 30 minutes it's better to have a structured talk with slides which make things easier. Otherwise, very often when we talk without guidance, then we might end up talking much more about things which we are more passionate about. So I would just share my screen and go through a few slides, and I'll want to quickly finish it so that we have more time for interactions and questions and inputs. So if I can share my slides, I hope, yeah. I hope my slides are visible.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
I have not seen many tech-savvy IAS like you, Singh, I must say.
Well, at least nobody will go back after this meeting and say that the babus of Ministry of Electronics and IT can't even share a slide. Anyways, on that note, let me just start my presentation on enabling ease of living and how we can try to reduce the hardships that citizens face, not only during COVID times, but in normal times as well. So, yeah, so like, what are the basic challenges? In fact, I just read a comment on the chat also, where Mudit Jan mentioned about how things have actually worsened and how citizens, even though we talk of ease of doing business, there are hardships which many people face in many ways. So this is a favorite slide that I always talk about whenever we talk of the government, like what happens, like what is it that is the biggest challenge that we are unable to address. Very often what we do is that when citizens interact with governments, and they do it for multiple levels, whether a lot of has been changed, but earlier, like if you wind back like 20 years and remember how you used to apply for a passport, or how you used to book your train tickets, or how you used to apply for a driving license. In fact, in many sessions, I have interacted with hundreds of people, and almost 90% people do not know how to apply for a driving license, and they have paid some speed money to get a driving license, because very often we are not sure about what is the procedure for doing that. Then what used to happen because of that, when there is air mystification, like in Barakamba Road, the passport office in Delhi, very often there was a time when we used to see people queuing up at 4 in the morning just to get in line for getting the passport appointment. A lot has changed thanks to the Digital India initiatives. Now you can book your appointment and maybe get your passport within a week or something without any harassment and without having to pay anyone anything. Similar things have been done in several other fields. The income tax returns, I remember the first income tax return I had filed, I had to go to Pragati Maidan to drop my return in the box there, and there used to be a long queue. Now, of course, we e-sign it, we send it, and it is done. So things have become simpler. So earlier, because of all these things, you would always find there will be queues. So wherever there are no systems, no procedures, there will be queues, and that will require multiple visits to various offices. Outcome will be in suspense. Gatekeepers will be there at all turn. And when quality is a service and service is not a right, then there will be intermediaries, there will be shortcuts, the bribes will have to be repaid, and exceptions become the rule. So these are the kind of challenges that that the citizens have been facing with regard to dealing with the government. Some of it have been resolved, but a lot more needs to be done, and every such government office wherever these things are faced. So this is in line. And when we talk of the sustainable development goals, how do these translate to kind of addressing the issues with the sustainable development goals talk about? The 17 goals that we have, therein if you look at, like, all these aspects have an impact on governance. So whether it's about quality education or ensuring health or ensuring nobody suffers from hunger or poverty, or ensuring that climate action is done, pollution, Delhi, we are seeing how it's how we are banning crackers in order to ensure that people can breathe free air. So all these issues are related to governance challenges that is within the mandate of some government department or the other. Of course, it requires a joint action along with citizens and all, but the prime role will remain of the government. Like, how do we ensure that we improve our services? And in order to do that, what do we do? What the key objectives that we have to identify with regard to ensuring sustainable development and ensuring that we go up in the perception index, like the way citizens perceive the government or any government department at any level. We'll have to ensure that how do we tackle that? So tackling poverty becomes a big issue. How do we have rural employment guarantee schemes? How do we ensure that anybody who is looking for a job in a rural area and is stressed is able to apply for a job under Manrega and is able to get it? How do we ensure that people don't die of hunger? How do we ensure that implementation of public distribution system is done in a fair and equitable manner and everybody gets the food grains that he's entitled for? Then how do we ensure that every region in the country gets sufficient investments for ensuring inclusive and equitable growth? How do we create opportunities for all? How do we ensure that every child gets into a school? How do we ensure that healthcare is universal? So for all these schemes, we have multiple, for all these objectives. We have a Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan for education. We'll have a skill development mission. We'll have Pradhan Mantri Jan, the Ayushman Bharat scheme, which provides health insurance scheme for coverage of almost 5 lakh rupees for everyone who is poor. Then the NFSA provides food grains under the Food Security Act. Then whether it's the social welfare schemes with regard to providing scholarships or providing pensions, all of these schemes are there, and these all try to meet the objectives that are identified in the sustainable development goals. But when we are implementing these schemes, very often the feedback that we get from citizens is that these are not implemented in a very transparent manner, and they suffer through inefficiencies or issues of corruption, because of which the intended benefits are not received for one and all. So how do we tackle that? So one way to tackle that has been to use technology for ensuring not only transparency, but ensuring that we are able to have procedures which are transparent, which are procedures where we can account who is doing what at what level, and we are able to ensure that every beneficiary in any government scheme gets whatever is due to it. If you look at the last few years, beginning from the National E-Governance Plan, which evolved into the Digital India program, a lot has been done in various sectors, which has ensured that we are able to reach to the last mile. For example, with the Aadhaar project, now we are nearing 10 years of Aadhaar, which is almost ubiquitous coverage of Aadhaar. That has ensured that everybody has an identity and everybody is using that identity to get services, whether it's under the Ayushman Bharat or for health, or whether it's for food, or whether it's for opening a bank account and getting a direct benefit transfer into their bank account directly without any leakage anywhere. So like, for example, if you look at the pandemic, just after the pandemic, there was a huge problem and there was an anticipation from across the world. Everybody thought that a lot of Indians will die more Indians will die of hunger than from the virus, especially with the long lockdown that we had. But because of the fact that we had a technology-enabled direct benefit transfer scheme, the Jan Dhan accounts, the government was able to instantly transfer money to the poor in their bank accounts, which could meet their immediate needs. Through the public distribution system, the allocations under the National Food Security Act, and I'm told the quantum additional allocation was for food grains that has been done was almost worth 1,35,000 crores. So that much additional food grains was given, and the poor were able to get it through the Aadhaar authentication system in order to ensure that there was no one who suffered from hunger or who would die. The National Scholarships Portal ensured that students do get their due money in their bank account through direct benefit transfer. The pension schemes, the old age pension, the widow pension, everything is transferred in the bank account directly without somebody holding onto the check and demanding speed money to transfer that funds. So with that, so there is a snapshot of services that has been implemented by using technology, which ensures that services are being able to be targeted better, implemented better, and transform governance, and to some extent reduce the hardship that citizens face in accessing public services. So as I mentioned about Aadhaar, what does Aadhaar do? Like today we have almost 1.27 billion Indians covered with Aadhaar, and it provides an identity that is like unique and it's lifelong, and cannot be taken away. And there is a authentication system, there is a deduplication mechanism. It provides citizens a proof of identity. It provides citizens the e-sign facility, the online authentication system that is there. So I come across a lot of people today who travel in trains with an Aadhaar ID card, with an Aadhaar card that becomes identity for themselves. Almost 90% people are signing their income tax returns by using the Aadhaar authentication system. And the consent framework that has been built in over Aadhaar ensures that the issues of data security, the issues of data privacy is handled. There have been a lot of noise about Aadhaar and about whether it violates privacy and how it's handled. But in the last 10 years, I have not come across a single issue where the Aadhaar has been breached and any violation has happened of any kind. But if you look at the balance, the kind of benefits.
Sir, excuse me. Sir, are you moving the slide? Because people are asking, the slide
There's
is...
only one initial slide.
Yeah, because we are seeing only the first. Yeah.
I'm on the 6th, 7th slide.
Oh, that's what. So when people started commenting, I thought there is some problem.
One second.
Go on.
Yeah. Just stop and just stop and okay, sir. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Now you can, yeah. So
Thank
now,
you,
sir.
Are you on the Aadhaar slide?
Yes, Aadhaar digital identity.
And
Thank you, sir.
Moving?
Yes, now it is moving, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So
Thank you, sir.
This slide, did you see or not?
No, we did not.
Oh.
We were only on the title slide, sir.
Oh,
So I thought you were giving the introduction and then you were going to show the slides.
So this was the second slide, which talked about what are the governance challenges, and very often the way citizens perceive government in many ways, and about service quality being impacted, and about citizens not getting what they're due, and always being the condition of citizens being bad because of the government not being responsive and all. Though a lot of it has changed over a period of years with regard to various services which have been digitized. So then I talked about the Sustainable Development Goals, of which all of you are aware of. So I will not repeat. Then of course, I hope the slides are moving.
Yes, they are.
Yes,
and
yes.
We
Yes,
heard
sir.
you very with rapt attention. Even
Yeah,
though
so
the slides were not moving. So we
Actually,
registered
we
what
did not-
talked up till now.
Yeah.
Oh.
We did not register. The slide was not moving because your talk was perfect, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, but the slides
No
would
problem.
have given more perspective. Anyway, so for sustainable development, we have to ensure that government becomes responsive and provides the services that it's expected to be. So then I talked about the digital services and the kind of services that have been enabled in the last few years, especially Aadhaar, enabling identification of beneficiaries, giving identities to people, and ensuring that people are able to access services in a seamless manner. And along with that, there are a host of other services, whether it's the filing income tax returns, the e-district services, or the direct benefit transfers, or the health services, the Ayushman Bharat scheme, the Umang project, the e-procurement. So all these projects, what we see, technology has been used to improve access to services. Even during the pandemic, for example, when the schools were shut and public schools and city schools, they moved on to Zoom and other modes of online classes. But there was a problem with the government schools, where the Diksha platform, which the government has set up, came in handy for the school education. And then the Swayam platform for the higher education, which is a kind of a MOOCs platform, helped in ensuring that online education continued for even the schools who did not have the resources like the private schools. So the digital identity of the Aadhaar, I was mentioning about that. Now we've reached 1.27 billion Aadhaar numbers in October 20, and almost everyone is using it in the way it was envisaged. The e-sign, the direct benefit transfer, Aadhaar enabled pay systems have really transformed the way citizens access services. The digital payments is again something which India has been a pioneer. The unified payment interface that was set up, what it does is that it allows seamless payment of payments that happens across different financial institutions. So whether it's a bank or any other financial institutions, one can transfer even small but for sums of money. And this has really revolutionized the way people access financial services. And since the access to mobile has been there, it has led to people having access to financial services, making payments in a secure manner. And it has been integrated with toll plazas, the Bharat QR code, the RuPay card. So the digital payments is another way, another area in which India has done pioneering work, and that is really giving a lot of benefits to all citizens across the country. If you let's look at the transactions on the UPI, the transactions have grown multifold in the last few years. If you look at if we had 100K transactions in October 16, so now we are almost 7,000 times of that transactions. And over a period of time, especially during pandemic, it has grown. Yeah.
Sir, can you repeat, because you just sound got stuck.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I was talking about the UPI payment interface and especially with the BHIM and other payment systems that we have. It has led to a exponential increase in the payments that we have in the digital domain, and this has empowered the citizens of the last mile and ensure that they also have an access to financial services which they can avail. Without really having a credit card or without really having a high-end instrument. The mobile phone becomes their financial instrument, and they are able to do even 10 rupee transactions without any cost. This is something which is unparalleled. Transferring funds, if you transfer funds to a bank in US, you know how tough it is, the SWIFT codes and other things. But in India, using the UPI interface for amounts up to less than 20,000 with BHIM and other apps, it's like so seamless and so easy, which has led to a exponential increase in digital transactions, which is almost 7,000 times of what it was earlier. The Jan Dhan Yojana has been a key initiative in which technology has been used to enable financial inclusion. The almost 41 crore Jan Dhan accounts, if you look at, is 411 million, more than populations of many big countries. So this is the number of bank accounts which have been opened under this scheme, and a lot of the amount of funds that is transferred to the poor through the direct benefit transfer does ensure that the leakages come down, ensure that the money does reach the last mile for people to spend wherever they want. The network of the bank mitras or the business correspondents has ensured that people are able to access financial services even in the villages. The network of common service centers has further enhanced it. And once people have a bank account, the other services with regard to the pensions and with regard to insurance also come in. The other key element about which I would talk about and about which we are working in MeitY to make it a reality is the DigiLocker project that we are implementing. What we find is that key citizens across their life cycle get various kinds of documents from the government, whether it's a birth certificate when they are born, from the birth certificate to the death certificate, the caste certificate, Aadhaar card, education certificate, vehicle registration, driving license, voter card, PAN card, marriage certificate, pension certificate, health certificate, various documents, land documents they get. And what happens is that if you look at this whole ecosystem, what we observe is that most of these documents are issued by one government department and asked by another government department. And the citizen is forced to act as a courier between these government departments. Like you take a certificate from one office and give it to the other office. So what is envisaged through the DigiLocker is that can we build up a system in which various government databases talk to each other rather than asking the citizen to submit a document. So for example, if you want to get a child admitted in the school, you have to submit a birth certificate, but the school education database can query that birth certificate from the birth certificate database. So citizen need not submit. If you're registering a company and you have to file income tax returns, can the ROC not take those documents directly from the income tax servers and with your consent? So once that system is done, then a lot of time which citizens spend in running from pillar to post or running from portal to portal will change. Because even when we digitize services, if we don't make these databases talk to each other through a common field, and luckily for us, we have Aadhaar as a common field or PAN card as a common field. So if there is a common field between various government databases, that would allow a seamless exchange of documents and services, and that would ensure that service delivery becomes more efficient and citizens are benefited, and that would be the true ease of living in the right sense. So how the DigiLocker functions? DigiLocker has three key stakeholders. One is the government department or the authority which issues a document, and the other is the citizens who are seeking that document. And then there are other requesters who verify, who authenticate those documents. So for example, if it is a driving license, the RTO will issue it. So RTO becomes the issuer. The citizen gets it, stores it in his DigiLocker, need not keep a paper copy of it. And since it's an authenticated document which is digitally stored through APIs with the link to the database of the issuer authority, the requester can verify the documents online. So this is the whole simple concept in which it works. So it has been integrated for Aadhaar card, it's integrated for PAN cards, it will be integrated for driving licenses, and now it's becoming the health locker also, and also the National Academic Depository, about which I will talk about it. So till date, we have almost 48 million users of the DigiLocker, and more than 4 billion documents are already there. We are seeing daily sign up of more than 50,000 users per day on DigiLocker. The educational awards, it started with the class 10th and the 12th board certificates. So today, all the 29 school state boards and the CBSE and the ICSE have integrated with DigiLocker, and all the academic certificates of the students are stored in the DigiLocker. And now the Ministry of Higher Education has also integrated it to become the National Academic Depository, wherein all the academic documents of higher education will also be stored in the same DigiLocker. And this will allow people to verify those documents digitally without somebody having to submit the applications in paper, signed by a gazetted officer or something. And in the recent Delhi University admissions, which just concluded last month, we were told that almost more than 100,000 students, their class 12 certificates were verified electronically through the DigiLocker without any paper document submission. And now this is being upscaled to become the National Academic Depository for higher education also. So all universities and colleges will also start issuing digital documents which will be stored in the DigiLocker of the citizens. And as per the new education policy, this is also being included for the academic credit transfer scheme that they are launching. Like if somebody does 1 year of college in say Bombay and he moves on to say Calcutta or to Chennai for any reason, then he should be able to transfer the credits that he has earned in his earlier college or the earlier city where he was studying to the next college. So that would also, this National Academic Depository will enable the academic bank of credits and the transfer of credit scheme, which will greatly benefit students who very often drop out because of various reasons. And as per the National Digital Health Mission, the DigiLocker is also becoming the health locker for storing your electronic health records. So all the electronic health records, whether you have a blood report or X-ray report or a CT scan, all of it can be stored in your DigiLocker and shared with the health service provider with your consent. So that is what is being enabled through the DigiLocker project. The other important project which has really been transforming services is the Umang project that we are implementing, which is a one mobile app for all government services. Because today there are so many mobile apps, every state, every department has their own mobile app, but very often you do not even know which is the authentic app and which is the service to take. So what has been done is that what the Umang does is brings all the electronic services on a common mobile app, and this app has got 2,000 plus services today from multiple government departments across the country, and it provides certain common services. So, and it has a intelligent interface in the sense that based on your location and based on your profile, it will show you the services that you need the most. So that ensures that mobile services are available on your handset, on your phone, without having to find out who will issue where. And after launch of this Umang app, many government departments discontinued their own apps because Umang was offering a better service. For example, the EPFO. Almost everyone in the country who is subscribed to EPFO is using the Umang app because it gives a very easy interface for knowing about your EPFO balance, about your EPFO withdrawals, and all the details. Then the other key project that we are implementing, about which I would like to mention, which is also contributing a big way in improving ease of living, is the GIS, the National Center for Geoinformatics that we have set up, which is a GIS platform for land information system, for mining systems, for industrial information system, and also being used for planning purposes and as a decision support system for locating, for example, a school or a hospital, where it should be located. What it does is that it helps a geographical base with regard to where the highways are, where are the roads, where are the population, and based on that, it will give you it will help you in identifying where a particular facility will be located. Recently, the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, they used our service to launch their single window system and the industrial information system, in which all the industrial land available across the country is available on a GIS platform, so that investors who are looking to invest in a particular stage for a particular project can go and see where are the land available and what is the connectivity, what is the power situation, what is the water availability, how far it is from the railway network. So that will ensure that they are able to make a better call with regard to their investment decision. And for government, it cuts down the red tape, it cuts down the inefficiencies, and it cuts down the lack of decision making, the non-availability of data in big way, and helps in taking decisions faster and quicker and more efficient decisions. The government e-marketplace we already talked about, which has revolutionized government procurements by building an online platform wherein people can sellers and buyers can register and procure services. In the last 5 to 6 years, in less than 5 years, it has gone up to almost orders worth 70,000 crores already. And today, the procurement cycles in the government has really come down. It has reduced corruption. It has allowed government to buy at the minimal price. It has functionalities like reverse auction, which gives a level playing field to all the businesses and ensures that people are able to buy and sell easily. The common services centers have been a key strategy for bridging the digital divide, because in our country, as we know, even though we have almost 60 crores people who are connected on who are connected to the internet, but there is a large majority of people who are, one second.
Overall, we have 34,000 odd startups.
So there is a large number of people who do not have access to internet or who do not have a device. So especially in the rural areas, the common service centers were set up to provide assisted access to people. And today we have around 360,000 common service centers functional, and they are offering not only public services but also business services. They're acting as business correspondents. The e-Grameen stores, which they became and started supplying products electronically to people in the rural areas, has had a turnover of, I'm told, more than 100 crores in the last few months. So there are a lot of transactions which is happening, a lot of jobs which have been created to common service centers, and more importantly, it is allowing people to access services in a digital mode in the rural areas also. Citizen engagement is a key part of the entire sustainable development strategy. Involving community is the essence of sustainable development. And how do we kind of involve people in the decision-making process in a democracy? What we always talk about democracy being of the people, by the people, for the people, but how do people get involved? Where do we get the people's inputs? And how do we inform people with regard to what the government is doing? And this brings me to talk a little bit about the MyGov initiative, which is the citizen engagement platform of Government of India. And what it does is that it serves as a bridge between citizens and the government, enables a two-way communication wherein citizens can give their inputs to the government through various policy discussions that we do. And government can also disseminate information to the citizens about what the government is doing, what is the rationale of taking a particular decision in a very easy to understand, simple format, and on all the forums on which citizens are normally there. So MyGov, when the Honorable Prime Minister launched it on 26 July 2014, he said that it's a promise of Suraj. It provides citizen a voice in the government, and makes the stakeholders part of the policy making process in order to get feedback from the citizens. So what MyGov does is that it involves citizens. Like when we launched a new education policy, the input for the citizens came through MyGov. For the next budget, very soon, I think on the 12th, we'll be going to launch the ideas box on MyGov, wherein what people and what various stakeholders from across the country wants from the government for the union budget, they will be able to give their suggestions. In fact, last year when we got more than 45,000 suggestions, and I was told that around 94 of them actually found a mention in the union budget. So again, for the next year's budget, we are going to start the consultation process on the 12th of November. And I would, anyone who is interested can log in into the portal and give their suggestions for the union budget. We have more than 1 crore, 1.43 crore users on MyGov. More than 5 crore users interact with us on social media across all platforms. The approximate user visits that we have had is more than 75 crores. And it has been like a continuous engagement process wherein people even from tier 2 or tier 3 cities engage with MyGov with regard to various policy discussions that we have. The stakeholders are, of course, the citizens are the core of our strategy, and the citizens interact with the central government entities, with the state government, with the local government, with the corporates, NGOs, through various activities that happen on MyGov. If we see the adoption of people to digital technologies, and if we regard COVID as an important milestone, what we have found is that the engagement levels of MyGov during the post-COVID period has grown threefold. Like earlier, since the launch in 2014, we had almost 5,000, we were adding almost 5,000 users per day. But post-February, the number of users who have been added per day has gone up to almost 16,000 users per day. So this has been like very big. And of course, the COVID communication that we did, especially with regard to driving behavioral change, with trying to explain concepts like quarantine, because in February, when I talked to my team, hardly anyone knew about what quarantine means. Today, it's become part of the lexicon, but to explain it to people in simple layman terms, with videos, with infographics, with images, with podcasts, with the testimonials from doctors and all, it was a huge exercise. So that contributed to that. Plus, of course, disseminating the government orders, because very often we were told that the lockdown orders, the unlockdown orders were too long, and it was, of course, written for because MHA orders are always legal orders. So very often common people find it difficult to understand. So what we did was that we took those orders and tried to convert it into simple slides, bullet points, infographics, and videos, so the people are able to make out what the government was trying to say. The social media outreach, we are one of the most followed social media profiles in government. And there also what we have found is that the uptake after the COVID, after February, has been huge. Whether it's on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or YouTube or LinkedIn or WhatsApp chatbot that we have, or a Telegram channel that we have, or our presence on the Indian social media channels like Roposo, ShareChat, Chingari, Koo, we have found a lot of engagement. And what we also observe is that every social media channel that we have has a different kind of user base. So the users who engage with us on Roposo might not be there on Instagram, might not be there on Twitter. And we find that a lot of people from the smaller towns, from tier 2, tier 3 cities, engage with us on various short video formats. If we have to make a video with regard to social distancing, or with regard to usage of masks, or with regard to following the COVID appropriate behavior, or having good nutrition, following the Ayush protocol, we find that these channels have a far bigger outreach in the smaller towns and in the rural areas. So this has been our experience, and what we have found is that when we can't expect citizens to come to our portal or to our app, but if citizens are there on whichever platform, if we go there, the engagement levels really go up. The MyGov building blocks, like how do we engage with citizens? We have several activities that go on MyGov. We do a lot of discussion forums. Discussion forums are our policy discussions. We take inputs of citizens on various government policies that are being formed. These inputs are then taken and given to the concerned departments for consideration and for adoption. We do quizzes, we do blogs. There are various tasks that we do, logos which are designed. The Swachh Bharat logo was designed on MyGov. The Lokpal logo was designed on MyGov. So there are various logos which have been designed. We have an Innovate platform. We recently did the App Innovation Challenge, Then for the AI summit that we held recently, for that we had a challenge on AI solutions. We did a video conferencing challenge in which we are trying to promote Indian startups and entrepreneurs to come up with interesting and innovative solutions. And these solutions are then adopted by the government, because very often many of these young startups and people who are coming up with innovative projects are not able to compete with in a regular tender process because of obvious reasons. But when they get recognition through the platform through the innovate challenges or through the government challenge that they do, and then people get noticed them, and then very of them have reported that they are getting funding and they are getting more interest from users from across the world. The volunteer platform is very active. We have a Self for Society portal on MyGov, wherein during COVID, more than lakhs of people volunteered to donate medical equipments. People volunteered to work as COVID warriors, about which it was mentioned, was also found on Mann Ki Baat of PM, for which also we collect inputs. In fact, for Mann Ki Baat also, there's a forum on MyGov wherein you can give suggestions. There's a toll-free number, 1800-11-7733, on which one can call and record their suggestions with regard to Mann Ki Baat. And all the suggestions which come on MyGov forum for Mann Ki Baat also is collated, analyzed. The top stories are picked up and shared with the Prime Minister's office for the next edition of MyGov. And we have an analytics tool which also gives us sentiment analysis. What is the topic about which people are talking about on social media, on digital media, and what are the issues that are of concern to the citizens that need to be addressed by the government. We've had several high impact campaigns. The Poshan Maha we just finished. We have just started a campaign for Diwali, Local for Diwali campaign, in which we are encouraging people to support the weavers and craftsmen by buying local handicraft products and gifting during Diwali. The COVID-19 campaign, we already have the page with regard to all the details. It's available in almost 8 Indian languages, and the information is shared for everyone. The Constitution Day, which is coming on 26th November, we have a campaign around that. So for every government activity, we do a lot of creatives and a lot of information dissemination in order to involve citizens in the governance process and ensuring participative governance. The innovation challenges and hackathons I have talked about. The drug discovery hackathon is going on MyGov, in which researchers from across the country are participating in the drug discovery mechanism. A lot of free tools are provided there, and people participate in giving that solution. The Vaibhav Summit with DRDO recently organized. It was done through MyGov. The Shri Shakti Challenge in partnership with the UN Women we did, in which we identified around 6 women entrepreneurs who have built innovative projects, innovative solutions to address COVID-19 as also challenges which a large number of women face. Then a new education policy I've already spoken about. So a lot of innovation challenges happen with an objective to involve the younger generation, to involve the entrepreneurs, and to involve the startups. The myth busting and fighting fake news is also an important activity that we indulge on MyGov. Very often during COVID and otherwise, we find a lot of fake news floating. So MyGov shares on its social media handles and on our portal about fake news that are circulating or about myths that are being shared. Arogya Setu has been a very important part of in which MyGov is associated with it, because Arogya Setu, which is the world's largest contact tracing app, and it has users more than all other contact tracing apps in the world. And we support the Arogya Setu app with regard to its content, with regard to dissemination information, with regard to what it means, what it does, in what ways it functions. So this all information is shared through MyGov. Then the media section of Arogya Setu on your app is also done by MyGov, wherein we got celebrities, whether it was Ajay Devgan or Akshay Kumar or Amitabh Bachchan or the cricketers for the Mask Up campaign. All these things are put on the app in order to educate people with regard to the COVID appropriate behavior. So I would just conclude with this last slide. Is like, what does digital technologies do, and what does MyGov or Umang or DigiLocker or NEGD or Digital India do, or in partnership with various ministries? Is that it is helping, technology is helping for a common man to have ease of living by enabling to reach the unreached, to reach the last mile, to ensure transparency, to reduce corruption, to bring in accountability, to bring in responsiveness, and to reduce the hardship that citizens are facing in accessing public services. So this was all that I wanted to talk about today, and I'll be willing to take any questions, if any.
So thank you very much. Am I audible, Sylvie?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Abhishek. That was very detailed, but more than that, a very, very interesting presentation. And I must say that through MyGov and other digital activities, I can see there is a complete digital transformation of the governance and the processes through which the services are delivered to the common man. I would like to add one more thing to your last slide, which you said that, what it has done is the reaching the unreached, the accountability, the transparency. I would say it has also added a lot in terms of equanimity, because it is through these digital initiatives that, the gap between the common citizen and a moneyed person or a very resourceful person, almost everyone, so that information asymmetry has been absolutely bridged, So thank you for that. I'm glad you mentioned about sustainable development goals, missing, So I had just very recently, I read a report of United Nations ESCAPE, which is focused to Asia Pacific achievement of the sustainable development goals. And that report 2020 says, this is just a suggestion and you might like to respond if you wish, that there are 3 specific sustainable development goals in which Asia is lacking, which includes even India. And that is goal number 10, which means inequalities in terms of income. Goal number 12, which is responsible consumption. And goal number 13, which is the climate action. So I would request that going forward, if MyGov with the NITI Aayog, which is particularly tracking the achievement of the SDGs, depending on the promises government of India has made to United Nations, you might like to take it up at whatever forum. And if you have any responses, I'll be more than happy. And then I'll open it for question and answer for others.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I will send you a different write-up on this, when we would want these 3 particular SDGs to be taken up at the appropriate level. Let me now come to Amrita. I think you also have an observation or a question related to SDG. Can you come in? Selby Amrita Chaudhary, can you unmute her?
Can you unmute and ask your question, ma'am?
Yes, I'm just So first of all, thank you, Abhishek, for this really wonderful presentation. It was very informative, and it was really heartening to see all the different initiatives that are ongoing and the scale and pace at which it is ongoing, which is really credible, really setting world standards in many different ways. So Abhishek, my question for you was that from a vision and a policy level, obviously we have the Sustainable Development Goals and we have the Ease of Living Index. From a ideation perspective, and especially the last slide that you shared with us, there is this whole idea of participative governance, right? In many different ways. But at the same time, decision making to a large extent, happens by a certain set of stakeholders. So can you share with us some examples of how the voice of citizen actually has been captured in the process to have a real impact either at the policy level or at the execution level to see whether certain things are being executed well or they need to be changed in trajectories and so on. So any examples of how the voice of the ordinary citizen is being captured and has really made a difference in the process?
See, as I mentioned, one of the key things that we do on MyGov is policy consultation. So whether recently launched the new education policy, we opened it for suggestions from citizens, and we got more than 15 lakh suggestions in just a week. So, and many of it, and all of it was analyzed. And what the Ministry of Education had done was that they had broken it into 102 themes. And along those themes, they had certain questions. And against each question, citizens and especially the stakeholders, the teachers, the principals gave their suggestions. Like, for example, digital education and for starting to teach coding was a very key suggestion that came in from the consultations. And it was introduced, it found a mention in that. For the budget, as I mentioned, last year budget that consultation we did, we got more than 20,000 suggestions, and out of which the finance ministry says that around 94 odd of them were found a mention in the budget document. Then whether it's for telecom, TRAI's spectrum auction policies, suggestions are taken from the stakeholders. The government, the non-private data sharing committee report, the Krish Gopalakrishnan committee report, it was shared on MyGov, on which we got suggestions from citizens, which is being analyzed right now. For the National Digital Health Mission, the entire strategy document was shared on MyGov, and we got inputs from citizens that the digital health is considering and implementing it. So textile policy was discussed on MyGov, and we got a lot of suggestions from stakeholders, which was again incorporated. So I would, it's very difficult to identify one particular idea or one particular suggestion, because many of these suggestions are there through various channels. But when it comes from the citizens, we are able to analyze and get a feel of like, what is the top issue that citizens are talking about. Like the Mann Ki Baat that we do for Prime Minister every month, and some of the suggestions that comes on our forum are actually spoken about by the Prime Minister in the Mann Ki Baat. So that also gives an input to like whether the citizens want the PM to speak on health or education or pollution or promoting entrepreneurship or something else. So all these ideas come through citizens. So what it does is that it gives a platform when citizens can actually come and talk to the government, and in a digital way, keep a track of it and find out in what ways the positive ideas can be taken by the government. So what we try to do is that we do not try to make it into grievance redressal portal, for which there is another portal, pgportal.gov.in, where grievances are tackled. Herein, we try to take positive suggestions which are built in. In fact, even the idea for the contact tracing app, the Arogya Setu, also came in through one of our innovation challenges. When we launched it in the month of March, the Bluetooth and location-based contact tracing suggestion also came on this platform. Of course, there were multiple people who gave the same suggestion, and Singapore was also having the same solution. But the fact that it came and then the persons involved got involved in developing the application along with the government team, and ultimately became what it is. These are few examples that I can immediately think of.
Thank you for that. Okay. Can I invite Kavita Sachwani now? Can you unmute Kavita Selvi?
Yes, yes. Mrs. Sachwani, you can ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Chauhan and Team IMC for setting this important session up. I think it is such an important and exciting collaboration to explore. And Mr. Abhishek, many congratulations on continuing to build MyGov as a very engaging platform connecting such a large number of stakeholders, and in particular the citizens, on such a diverse range of relevant issues, while connecting and linking these back with each of the line ministries in the process. Very, very impressive indeed. So I am Kavita Sachwani from the 2030 Water Resources Group of the World Bank. We work in 11 countries, including India, where we work through a multi-stakeholder platform on sustainable management of water resources. In Maharashtra, IMC is a member of our MSP. So one point we were discussing yesterday, which I thought we could explore with you, with specific reference to increasing ease of living. And this is not a new engagement per se, but a continued one, possibly with the Ministry of Jal Shakti. MyGov has run some really interesting and impactful campaigns with the Ministry on water conservation, water heroes, etc. And one important one that we could engage again with the Ministry of Jal Shakti and the citizens on is the need for their support on building a circular water economy, which is how do we reduce, recycle, reuse grey water in the urban context involving citizens. And I think today water is mostly being managed, I think all of us would agree, in a linear fashion. But as water demand grows, especially during these pandemic days, we have to move from a linear model to a more circular one. And the irony of wastewater is that it is already in the location where fresh water is needed. So I think there's a lot that we can do to ensure that the linear use of water gives way to a more sustainable continuum. And I think we all know that there are examples of Singapore, Israel, and many other countries where treatment of urban wastewater is close to 100%. I think Israel, the figures are 90 and 85%, which means 90% is treated and 85% of that treated water is reused. India also, I think many states have a policy for treated wastewater reuse for various applications. There's a national policy in the making on safe reuse of treated water in the context of agriculture, industrial, and urban use. And I think this draft was out just last month. It's currently available for public comment, and it talks about Apna Jal, which captures the notion of safe and beneficial use of treated used water. And the use of this term aims to shift perceptions towards treated used water being a resource and opportunity rather than a liability. So clearly the government is focusing on it, and states have their own policies. Maharashtra government has a policy on wastewater reuse. So from an ease of living perspective, I think there is a lot that we can do to rope in citizens for increasing access to alternative sources of safe water for non-potable uses, I think specifically in the domestic or the urban context. Many housing complexes have severe water supply crises and are dependent on tanker water supply. Just as we are stressing on the need for water harvesting, I think there's also a lot of work that we can do to stress on water reuse and recycle. And there's already a lot being done, I think, by many housing complexes. But the idea is to institutionalize it for existing communities and also new constructions. So we can tie up with the Ministry of Jal Shakti and MoHUA and real estate developers, and maybe mandate it at the time of construction itself. And as part of 2030 WRG, we are working with various stakeholders on a number of low-cost, nature-based solutions.
So, Kavita, for the sake of time, I think I would like to just interject. I think that's a very interesting observation and comment and initiative by World Bank. But a quick response from you, Abhishek, how can we sort of...
It's a brilliant idea, and Kavita, I must thank you for talking about it. This is one of the issues which have been discussed in several meetings, but yes, we need to, from ideas and from the technologies that are there for using wastewater, we need to make it more popular. We need to institutionalize in what ways it can actually happen in cities, and we can adopt it. The two things that come to my mind immediately: one, if there are certain stories or certain examples from a country wherein people are doing that, if that is shared with us either by the ministry or by the World Bank, we will ensure that we popularize it, we share it as in a way an Atmanirbhar story of using your own water for your own needs. Something like that can be done. The second thing that can be done is that if there are technologies that we are exploring, then an innovation challenge can be looked into, wherein startups and entrepreneurs can come up with interesting technologies that are low cost and can be easily adopted. So look forward to talking to you offline on this initiative, and there's something that I will really looking forward to work with.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful to hear indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Professor
Thank
John.
you, sir. Thank you. May I bring in Prabhat Pani? Prabhat, you have worked in the social sector quite a bit, and now you are a professor at SP Jain Institute. Would you like to see, I mean, from the ground level, have you seen the common man? How do they feel about these initiatives of MyGov and all the digital initiatives?
So Mr. Prabhat is not there. Can you just tell me what is his full name?
Prabhat Pani.
No,
P-A-N-I.
No, he's not.
Dropped off?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So let me then now bring Inakshi. Inakshi, you had a question?
Yeah,
Inakshi,
madam. Please unmute yourselves.
Yeah, hi, Abhishek. That was a fantastic presentation. And my compliments to you on some of the great work that you're sort of spearheading. And we've had the privilege of you speaking even at some of our HPS forums. And so one of the questions that I wanted to actually ask on behalf of some of us who are all part of the IMC Ease of Living Committee is in how do you think we could, as a committee, sort of leverage some of the work that you're doing or support some of the work that you're doing? For one, I don't know whether every single policy and every single initiative that you've launched is known to people in the first place. I don't know as to whether my driver and my cook and my other, sort of support staff and help would even be aware of, the fact that they have access to A, B, C, D. So I'm just curious as to in what way can we how can we sort of help you in taking this to the next level in terms of implementation?
Yeah, in fact, thank you for the kind words, and you have like kind of volunteered to be a partner in the MyGov story and the journey. So, which is very nice, because our endeavor is to ensure that whatever the government does, because what you mentioned about MyGov is actually true about many government departments. There is a lot that the government does. Like only day before yesterday, I came to know that those who are hearing impaired till the age of 6, if they are detected, they get the surgery done free of cost by the government. But very often people don't know about this. So there are a lot of government schemes and programs about which citizens are not aware of. So what MyGov is doing is that in its limited way, trying to educate people through its portal, through its app, through its social media presence and all. And even though the numbers may look to be huge, but it's a fraction of what is required to be done. So we need more partners, we need more stakeholders, we need more people to be aware of what MyGov is doing, what the government is doing, and disseminate it to every nook and corner through every channel which is possible. So what we are doing right now is that we are using social media in a big way. We are using even short video apps which are very popular in people who are not so apt that they will use Twitter and all, but they will use a Chingari, or earlier they used to use TikTok. So we have tried to use every platform that is available to reach out to people. But yes, we would require real organizations like IMC, like you, like HBS Publishing, and every other entity to be, first we reach out to them, make them aware, and they become our partner, they become stakeholders, they start sharing it. And through a word of mouth and through a sharing on social media, this will spread. So that's what comes to my mind. But yes, if there are any more interesting ideas of trying to amplify it further, I'd be willing to take that and try to see how best we can do. Because the endeavor is to ensure that everybody benefits from the schemes that the government designs for them. And it should not be, access should not be limited to people who know about some things, who know about a particular benefit that is there. If it's a right of every citizen, then it should be made available to every citizen.
So thank you, Abhishek. Actually, we at the committee are actively considering how can we come up with a concrete plan to work and partner with MyGov. We also have one of the corporate, senior corporate world person, Uday Khanna, with us, who has been the chairman of a couple of companies and all. But I'll come to Uday in a bit. Before that, I'd like to bring in Veera Lakshmanan. Sylvie, can you unmute Veera Lakshmanan?
Just a minute, sir. Veera. No.
Lakshmanan.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, sir. Please address your query. Please unmute yourself, sir. I'm not getting any response from him, sir. Mr.
Okay.
Veera Lakshmanan? No response. Yes, sir.
So we'll come back to you. So over to you, Uday. Uday, you would like to make an observation or ask a question?
Yeah, I think, thanks for calling on me, Mahendra. I was proposing to be a silent listener on this. I think the great work in terms of bringing the government policies to the mass of our people. My only question was, how interactive is MyGovern? Is there a monitoring of responses to citizens' needs or queries, or given the size and scope, is that at all possible? Glad to hear the views on that.
Yeah, in fact, a very valid question, and that's what we struggle with all the time. But what we do is that at least the suggestions that we get, like for example, the 15 lakh suggestions that came on the National New Education Policy. So in order to analyze that, we of course have analytical tools, text analytics and all, which does segregation and trying to identify sentiment and trying to pick up the suggestions. We put them in various buckets with regard to what the suggestion is talking about, and then we share it with the concerned ministry and department. And while we would like to reply to every suggestion that comes to us, but we are not able to. But very often we do, like for people wherein the suggestions are chosen, we do reply to them, we do interact with them. We have started a concept called MyGov Sathi, in which out of the 1.43 lakh crore people that we have on our platform, we have identified number of users who interact with us more frequently. And we have tried to identify them as district-wise and block-wise and village-wise volunteers who are working with MyGov. And then we have various channels. After we contact them through emails and all, we take their consent. And then if they are willing to work with us, then we kind of share with them all the information. Then they are able to share that in the local community. So that is the way we have built in. But while we would love to respond to every suggestion that comes to us, but so far we have not been able to. But those which are valuable and those suggestions which are picked up, those are replied to and engaged with.
Thank you. So we also have Ramesh Daswani with us. You know, Ramesh works in the, again, NGO sector and social sector. Ramesh, would you like to ask a question? Can you unmute Ramesh?
Yes, he's been unmuted. Mr. Ramesh Daswani? Yeah. Please
Thank you. Thank you, Chauhan sir. Thank you, Abhishek ji. Like everyone said, I echo the same sentiment that we are very enlightened with your talk. And we are glad that you came this afternoon to speak to IMC. Representing the NGO sector, sir, I just wanted to know what are the features and advantages which we could get out of my government, because we are all here to spread education and help the living conditions to be bettered. So in what way an NGO partner could benefit out of this program of yours, sir?
See, what is happening is that a lot of NGOs do use our content freely, and share it further across. Like, for example, we have a lot of podcasts. We started, especially in like of COVID, after the COVID pandemic.
Right.
And especially for people who do not have access to internet or who do not have access to a smartphone.
Right.
Radio becomes a big channel. So the Association of Community Radio Operators spoke to us and they started using our podcast free of cost. So our basic philosophy is that any content that is on MyGov, any of our videos, any of our creatives, since it is all in public interest, they can be shared freely with anyone and everyone.
Right.
So, like a new education policy, we came up with several videos, we came up with several infographics to explain about what the changes are. So very often, not everybody will be able to read the 300-page document.
Right.
But people will be able to look at 20 infographics, which has everything as a bullet points. So that content is available. That content we have shared. A lot of NGOs in the rural areas are using it to educate the teachers in the rural areas. Like, what is it that has changed? Because otherwise what happens is that very often the policies are made at the highest level. And by the time it reaches the last mile, because ultimately how a teacher teaches in a primary school will determine whether the policy is successful or not. So that learning curve takes a lot of time. So if the NGOs can partner with us in trying to disseminate such information about education, it will really help. Plus, if you have any other field level inputs with regard to what is it that is needed, that would be most welcome. So we can we can share it with the Ministry of Education and work around in trying to address that challenge.
Thank you so much, sir. So we'll interact with you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Sylvie, I think Mr. Veera Lakshmanan is now available. Can you unmute him once again? Try it.
No, he's left, sir, I suppose. He had to go for
all right.
He's sent in the chat.
So he's sending me his question on WhatsApp, therefore I can read out Abhishek for you. He says, what is that MyGov doing in the mission to improve the earning capability of our farmers?
See, MyGov, what we have been doing is that all the details with regard to various schemes that the government is implementing for farmers, that information is shared with through MyGov. But over and above, what the government is doing is coming up with an integrated information system for farmers. And it's called, it's actually bringing together data analytics and bringing together information that exists from various sources in order to give real-time advisories to farmers. But today, what we find is that we have data available from IMD, which gives us information with regard to weather, conditions with regard to when it will rain, what will the weather conditions. We have soil health card data, which has mapped almost every plot of land in this country with regard to what kind of crops can be grown there. We have crop history data with regard to what has been the yield for various crops in every plot of land. The land records data is digitized in most states, and it is integrated with Aadhaar numbers also in many states. The same has mobile numbers. So it is possible to give real-time advisory to farmers in the language of their choice by collating the data from weather, from soil health card, from crop history, and advising the farmers about the crops that they should be growing on their plot of land. And when should they be doing sowing, when should be they using fertilizers, in what quantity they should be using fertilizers. The mandi prices are available on eNAM, which is again another digital initiative of Ministry of Agriculture. So when they should harvest, which markets they should sell, how they should maximize their yield. So what it does is that it reduces the input cost of the farmers, also gives them access to credit, and reduces their input cost, increases their yield and productivity and the prices that they get in the market, and ultimately helps in augmenting their income. Similar initiatives are being done in horticulture, in animal husbandry, in dairy, in poultry. So a sum total of using digital technologies and using MyGov to educate people about the solutions which are existing will ultimately help in benefiting the farmers.
Thank you very much. Can I invite now Rishi Gupta? Can you unmute Rishi Gupta?
Yes. Mr. Rishi Gupta, please address your question.
And after this, I'll come to Rajya Lakshmi. So Rajya Lakshmi, please be ready.
Hi Abhishek ji. It's nice to meet you, and very fortunate to hear your speech. I'm sure it's been more than an hour or so. You must be also looking at the watch, so I'll be very quick in my question. We also participated a lot on the digital side, especially during the pandemic, and post that on the DBT disbursement and the last mile delivery of money, which was there, and it was a very overwhelming sight to see lakhs and lakhs of customers come to our point for withdrawal of money. My only question is that government uses a mix of various means of dispersing subsidies to the people, and we are also having challenge in terms of people are not aware of what kind of services we are getting or what kind of subsidies they can get. End of the day, we want to service some 50 to maybe 75 million households in the country, and we service them through various subsidies under different channels. Why can't we just get everything under one umbrella entity or under one umbrella scheme, in which say we add all the subsidies under various schemes and it adds to say 10,000 rupees per annum per household or per member in a household. So rather than dispersing through multiple channels, the cost of the delivery through our PDS is more than the delivery itself, the value of the delivery. And we have seen that the effective mechanism of dispersing in cash has been very, very good. And we have during pandemic also, which was, I think, the test of our lives, if we are able to do it. Why can't we just think of monetizing this into some cash form? I'm sure the amount of money you will disperse, you will save the same amount of money. And I understand it could be a job issue because this scheme also generates lakhs of cost, lakhs of employment for the customers, for the people. But I would say, I think the time has come and we have tested our systems that the money can be dispersed directly into the bank accounts and can be done effectively through the Aadhaar ecosystem. So we should look at converting all of it into one umbrella entity and dispersing in cash. That's from my side. And thank you, sir, for helping the poor people. And we actually saw it on the ground, the benefit the PMJDY and the DBT have done to the lives of people. Millions and millions of people have been saved through the effort of the government. Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Rishi, for the brilliant suggestions. And yes, this is a long-term policy debate about conditional cash transfers versus issuing food and all. And this has been debated at multiple forums, while the normal response will be that cash transfers are better and easier and easier to implement, and it's like a pipe without any holes, and whatever is sent from the top reaches the bottom. So that is the simpler argument about that. But when we do it, I was associated with Food Corporation of India also, where we automated these procurement processes and all. But when you implement it and when you talk to states and all, you find that farmers produce food grains, farmers sell food grains, and ultimately it will be bought by, if the government doesn't buy it, somebody else will buy it. But then the cost of giving it at the same price across the country is not possible. So that angle comes in. Then there are several other entitlement based schemes, like who is eligible for what. Not everybody is eligible for Manrega, not everybody is available from a housing scheme. So multiple issues are involved. But yes, conditional cash transfers can be built in. It's not that it cannot be. The whole universal basic income debate is around that. So it's a valid suggestion, but it requires much more discussions and much more. The decision making will be something which will be a policy call at a much higher level. So yes, that's a debate that we all are indulging in. There are pros and cons about the whole thing. It can take one full session on what is better and in what ways it can impact livelihoods and SDGs in a better manner.
So maybe we would like to sort of create another session sometimes later, involving others. So over to you now, Rajalakshmi.
Thank you, Mr. Chauhan. Mr. Abhishek ji, it's fantastic program. I'm so happy you joined. But I mean, besides being in business, I'm also heading an organization for hearing impaired girls, poor deaf girls in 14 states, which is like a large number, perhaps is the largest in the country, under All India Foundation for Deaf Women. And I didn't even know, and I'm educated, and most of them are computer friendly. I mean, they're poor girls, but most of them are now training on the computers. How is it I didn't know till you mentioned that till the age of 6 or whatever, if they're, government is going to do free either surgery or giving them the implant or whatever. I didn't even know. And the second thing is, we have been, I think IMC has dealt with Invest India, and we had done many programs with them, and they'd been talking about many of these things that you're doing. But information about what you are doing hasn't really, you're talking about lakhs and crores and all, but honestly, it hasn't come to me, which means many others have not got it. I mean, that's not a very good way of advertising or letting people know. It has to be heard by everyone. It has been known. Great programs, great initiatives. Imagine marks being just sent from one place to another, digitized. I mean, like, how many people just keep on waiting for the certificates? And amazing things you're doing. I think it's awesome. But you have to come with a big program at the government level. It's not just like my government. It's like our government, we have to do something. You have to disseminate this information immediately.
Yes.
So thanks, Rajalakshmi. I think you have given a food for thought for us. Yes, Mr.
Thanks for your observations. And in fact, we do realize, as I mentioned, is that while we have crore plus users plus lakhs of followers on social media and all, but that is a fraction of what the size of the country is. To reach to every stakeholder, we need to communicate better. We need to take this to every forum. And I am sure this partnership that we are starting today with IMC will be a step in that direction. And as and when we have more stakeholders to whom we can reach out of what we are doing and what more we need to do, I am sure we'll be able to progress in that direction. So while I always tell my team is that while we have made some advances, but till every Indian knows about what the government stands for and where does the taxpayers' money go and in what ways it's spent, our job is not yet done. So we need to keep on it. We need to educate people much more. We need to be better in our communications, use every other channel which we are not using it right now, and ensure that everyone is educated about all the government initiatives.
So thank you. I think I wish this dialogue would go on, but for the paucity of time now, every good thing has to come to an end. I must profusely thank you. Before I invite our Director General, Mr. Ajit Mangrulkar, to propose a formal vote of thanks, I would like to say, Abhijit, in conclusion, that we have been working very, very actively within our committee and IMC larger conversation, that we would like to shortlist at least 2 or 3 major things that we can do where we can make a deep impact, high impact, and have a partnership with MyGov. We will very soon come back to you with which are these 2 or 3 or 4 activities, and then we will definitely like to get an action level. And thank you, Raj Lakshmi, for that suggestion, and that's precisely IMC's role would be. We've got a huge membership through our association, through our own members, and we would like to disseminate this information. And I would personally request Rajiv Podar, our chairman, and our own Director General Ajit, who is just going to come in, to let's try and work out how we can disseminate this information of these wonderful things that are happening. With that, I invite Ajit to propose a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chauhan. And it is my privilege to propose a vote of thanks at the end of this interesting and insightful discussion. On behalf of IMC, I would like to thank Mr. Abhishek Singh ji for addressing all of us and for an absolute fantastic discussions. In fact, it has given rise to a lot of ideas that IMC would like to implement. And like Mr. Chauhan said, that we would like to see what areas of MyGov we can actually work on. In fact, ease of living goes beyond ease of doing business. Improving quality of life and ease of living for millions of citizens is no small task, and it requires multiple partnerships. Partnerships between government, business, and civil society. Mr. Abhishek has presented a bird's eye view on strategies for enhancing participation of common citizen for ease of living. And sir, I would like to say that DigiLocker, which you sort of presented to us, really is a brilliant concept and will really help a lot of citizens in having all their documents in one place, safe and sound, and not having to carry them physically. So in fact, that's a concept which we would really like to also propagate within our membership. Hope all of you found the discussions enriching. I would like to thank the Ease of Living Committee headed by Mr. Chauhan. And I would like to thank all the participants for being here and making this session so interactive, asking very interesting questions and drawing the best out of this talk. Your presence is a source of encouragement to IMC. Thank you so much, Mr. Abhishek Singh ji, for agreeing to be part of this program. And I thank each and every one of you for logging on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ajit.
I add to that word of thanks to you, Abhishek. And this is the beginning of our actually relationship. So we'll keep nudging you quite a bit, going forward. I hope you will be available to us, and we want to make the best out of this dialogue. With that, thank you, everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.